Michael had been waiting for this day for months. The cornfield behind his house had grown tall and golden under the warm summer sun, and now it was finally ready for harvest. He woke up early, just as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, feeling both excitement and a little nervousness. Every year the harvest was a huge task, but this year felt especially important. He had promised himself that he would finish it efficiently and carefully. After a quick breakfast, Michael walked out to his old tractor. It was not a new machine, but it had been reliable for years. The engine rumbled to life with a familiar sound that always made him smile. The smell of oil and earth mixed together, and Michael felt that this morning was perfect for work. He adjusted his cap, climbed onto the tractor seat, and looked over the golden rows of corn stretching as far as he could see. He loved these moments. Working in the fields gave him a sense of freedom. The corn swayed gently in the breeze, making a soft rustling sound. Birds chirped in the distance, and the warm sunlight made everything glow. Michael began driving the tractor slowly, carefully cutting the rows of corn one after another. He hummed a little tune to himself, enjoying the rhythm of the work. As he worked, Michael noticed a few neighbors walking along the road near the edge of the field. He waved to them, and most waved back, smiling. Some even called out, asking how the harvest was going. Michael enjoyed the friendly greetings. Farming was hard work, but small connections like this made it feel worthwhile. However, there was one neighbor who did not smile or wave. Karen lived in the house closest to the field. She was a member of the local HOA and had a reputation for being very strict about rules. People in the neighborhood sometimes called her HOA Karen, because she was always watching, always checking, and always ready to complain about something. This morning, she stood on her porch, arms crossed, looking at Michael with a serious expression. Michael had seen her before, often during neighborhood meetings or when she inspected properties. He knew she liked to point out small mistakes and argue over minor details. Most of the time, he ignored her. Today, he thought he would just focus on his work and hope she stayed on her porch. The morning passed quietly. Michael drove the tractor up and down the field, carefully turning it at the ends of each row. He felt a deep satisfaction in seeing the harvested corn stacking neatly behind him. The tractor moved slowly but steadily, and Michael was proud of the progress he was making. He checked the engine, adjusted the blades, and made sure everything was working properly. His hands were steady, his mind focused, and his heart felt light. Around mid-morning, Michael paused to drink some water. He leaned against the tractor and looked around at the field. The sun was higher now, casting a warm glow over the golden corn. Everything looked perfect, and he felt grateful for the long hours of work he had put into planting, watering, and caring for this field. It was his labor, his pride, and now it was ready to give back to him. Karen, however, was still watching. She had moved from her porch to the edge of her driveway, where she could see the tractor more clearly. Michael noticed her frown but chose to ignore it. He had learned over the years that arguing with her rarely helped. She often complained about things that were not really a problem, and most of the time, it was easier to continue working calmly than to respond to her criticism. Michael climbed back onto the tractor and started moving again. As he drove along the rows, he hummed another tune. The tractor's engine sounded steady and strong, and he felt a sense of accomplishment with each row he completed. He enjoyed the rhythm of the work, the way the corn fell behind him, the way the earth smelled after being turned, and the quiet beauty of the early day. He reached the far end of the field, where the rows curved near the edge of the property. He needed to turn the tractor carefully, as this corner was close to Karen's driveway. Michael slowed down, checking both sides. The tractor's wheels crunched softly over the dry soil, and he guided it around the bend. Everything seemed normal, and he thought he was being careful. At that moment, he heard a small noise, a scrape against metal. Michael froze and looked up. Karen's car had rolled slightly forward and touched the back of his tractor. The collision was very minor, just a small bump, but it startled him. He quickly put the tractor in neutral and climbed down to see what had happened. Karen stepped out of her car looking more serious than ever. She walked over, her arms crossed, and began pointing at the small scratch on her bumper. "Look what you've done," she exclaimed. "This is completely unacceptable. You need to be more careful." Michael took a deep breath and smiled politely. "I'm sorry about that. I was turning the tractor and it seems your car rolled a little," he explained calmly. "It's a very small touch. I did not mean to cause any problem." Karen shook her head. This is dangerous. You need to know your boundaries. I'm calling the police. This is serious. Michael blinked in surprise. He had been farming here for years without any real issues. He had followed all rules, and now suddenly, she was calling the police over a tiny accident. He tried to remain calm. We can look at the damage together. It's very minor. I don't think the police need to be involved, he said politely, hoping she would understand. Karen did not seem to listen. She had already pulled out her phone and was dialing. Michael felt a mix of frustration and disbelief. He had been careful, following every rule, and yet this small accident had turned into a potential conflict. He sighed and returned to the tractor, hoping the situation would calm down soon. While waiting, Michael thought about the long hours ahead. He still had most of the cornfield to harvest. This minor setback could not stop him. He checked the tractor again, making sure everything was working properly. The engine purred softly, and he felt ready to continue. Karen stayed near her car, watching closely. Michael could feel her eyes following him as he climbed back onto the tractor. He waved politely, trying to ease the tension, but she only frowned. Michael shook his head and focused on the work. He reminded himself that patience was important. The corn would not wait, and he could not let a small argument ruin his day. As the morning passed, Michael worked steadily, carefully guiding the tractor across the field. The rows of corn slowly disappeared behind him, harvested and ready for collection. The sun climbed higher, and the warm breeze carried the sweet smell of fresh corn. Michael felt proud of his work, but he knew the situation with Karen was not yet resolved. Despite the tension, Michael stayed calm. He had learned over the years that being polite and patient was often the best way to deal with neighbors like Karen. He focused on the rhythm of the tractor, the beauty of the field, and the satisfaction of a job well done. Little by little, he began to feel more relaxed, remembering why he loved farming in the first place. By late morning, Michael had harvested nearly half the field. The tractor worked smoothly, and the corn looked perfect in neat rows. He paused for a moment to admire his progress. The field was golden, the sun was warm, and the birds were singing. Despite the earlier scare, Michael felt content. He knew that accidents happened, and he was ready to handle whatever came next calmly and wisely. Karen was still standing nearby, watching every move. Michael noticed her occasional frown but chose not to respond. Instead, he waved once more, smiling gently, and returned to his work. He reminded himself that patience and focus were more important than arguments or complaints. The corn needed to be harvested, and he could not let anyone's anger disrupt the rhythm of his day. The morning ended with Michael feeling a quiet satisfaction. He had managed the tractor, avoided any real damage, and harvested a large portion of his cornfield. He knew that dealing with Karen and the minor accident would require patience, but he was confident that everything could be resolved peacefully. With the sun shining brightly overhead, Michael looked over the field and smiled. The harvest was going well, and despite the tension, he felt a sense of pride in his hard work. Today was just the beginning, and he was ready for whatever challenges the rest of the harvest might bring. Michael was still on his tractor when he heard Karen's voice ringing out sharply across the edge of the field. She had stepped closer to her car now, arms crossed and eyes fixed on him. Her tone was stern and urgent, making it clear that she was upset. Michael felt a pang of frustration, but reminded himself to stay calm. He had handled minor disputes before, and patience always worked better than arguing. He climbed down from the tractor to inspect the small mark on her bumper. The car had only touched the tractor lightly, leaving a tiny scratch that could barely be seen. Michael tried to keep his voice gentle. "It is a very small touch," he said. "Your car moved slightly on its own, and I was turning the tractor carefully. I did not cause any real damage." Karen shook her head vigorously. "No, you were not careful. You need to be more responsible. This is serious. I am calling the police," she said, holding up her phone as if it were a shield. Michael watched as she started dialing, knowing that the situation was about to escalate unnecessarily. He felt a mix of disbelief and worry. Michael had always respected the rules of the neighborhood and the HOA. He had worked hard to maintain his property and ensure that his farming activities were safe and neat. He had never had a real conflict with any neighbor, and now a minor accident had turned into a confrontation. He took a deep breath to steady himself and reminded himself that staying calm was the best response. Karen's voice continued as she spoke rapidly into the phone, explaining the situation to whoever answered on the other end. Michael could only catch fragments, but it was clear that she was describing him as reckless and careless. He felt his frustration rise, but he reminded himself not to respond in anger. Any argument could make the situation worse, especially with the police involved. He looked around and saw a few neighbors watching from their yards. Some were curious, some seemed amused, and others looked concerned. Michael realized that everyone in the neighborhood would soon hear about this incident. He wondered if Karen had done this before, calling authorities over minor disputes. He had heard stories, but experiencing it firsthand was different. Michael approached Karen carefully, keeping his hands visible and his voice calm. "We can look at the situation together," he suggested. The contact was very small. "I do not think the police need to be involved. We can resolve this quietly." Karen did not look convinced. "I already called them," she said firmly. "This is the right thing to do. You need to be taught a lesson about following rules and boundaries." Michael nodded slowly. He could not change her mind, so he decided to focus on the facts and let the authorities handle it. While waiting for the police to arrive, Michael returned to his tractor and made sure everything was in order. He checked the engine, adjusted the blades, and made sure the wheels were properly aligned. Despite the distraction, he wanted to be ready to continue his work once the situation was resolved. The sun was climbing higher and the field needed attention. Karen paced near her car, occasionally muttering to herself and checking her phone. She seemed determined to make this incident bigger than it was. Michael noticed her stern expression but ignored it, focusing on the tractor and the golden corn stretching around him. He reminded himself that keeping calm was more important than arguing or complaining. A few minutes later, a police car arrived, driving slowly along the edge of the road. The officers stepped out, both wearing calm and professional expressions. They walked over to where Michael and Karen were standing. Michael greeted them politely, explaining the situation in a steady voice. "I was harvesting corn in my field," he said. "The tractor is on my property and the car only touched it lightly. There is very minor contact and no one was hurt." Karen spoke next, explaining her side. She described the event in detail, emphasizing that Michael had been reckless. She gestured toward the scratch on her bumper, making it seem larger than it really was. Michael remained quiet, letting the officers assess the situation without interrupting. He knew that staying polite and factual would help them understand what really happened. The officers examined both the tractor and the car. One of them checked the small mark on the bumper and then looked at the tractor carefully. After a few moments, the officer nodded. "It looks like a minor contact," he said. "No serious damage occurred and no one was hurt. Accidents like this can happen, especially with vehicles on uneven ground." Karen frowned, clearly hoping for a different outcome. Michael, however, felt a small relief. The officers were fair and professional, and they seemed to understand that this was not a dangerous situation. He explained again how he had been harvesting corn and how careful he had been. He also mentioned that the tractor had limited visibility in certain directions, making a small contact possible even when he was cautious. The officers asked Karen if she was satisfied with their inspection. She hesitated, then admitted that the scratch was minor. Michael saw her shoulders relax slightly, though her expression still looked stern. The officers spoke again. "Since this is a minor incident, we recommend that both parties try to resolve it peacefully." "No further action is needed," Michael nodded politely. "Thank you," he said. "I am happy to check for damage together and make sure everything is fine." He gestured toward the car, and together he and Karen examined the bumper. As expected, the scratch was barely visible. Michael suggested that a small touch-up could fix it completely. Karen muttered agreement, still looking serious but no longer yelling. The police officers wrote a brief report, noting that the incident was minor and that no one needed legal action. They thanked Michael for his calmness and professionalism and reminded both parties to remain friendly in the neighborhood. Karen listened but still looked slightly annoyed. Michael smiled politely, understanding that some people could not change their initial reactions immediately. After the officers left, Michael returned to his tractor. He felt a mixture of relief and continued focus. The incident had been stressful, but he had handled it calmly. The field still needed to be harvested, and he could not let a minor conflict ruin his day. The golden rows of corn seemed to welcome him back, and he felt motivated to continue. Karen remained near her car for a while, watching Michael resume his work. He waved politely, and she only nodded. Michael reminded himself that patience and kindness were often the best responses in tense situations. He climbed back onto the tractor and continued the harvest with careful attention, moving smoothly along the rows. As the morning continued, Michael noticed how peaceful the field felt despite the earlier conflict. The sun was warm, the breeze carried the sweet smell of corn, and birds chirped overhead. He realized that farming gave him a sense of control and calm, even when small problems arose. The tractor's engine hummed steadily, and he felt a rhythm that was both comforting and motivating. By midday, Michael had harvested a large portion of the cornfield. He paused to take a break, drinking water and wiping sweat from his forehead. He reflected on the morning's events, realizing that accidents could happen even when one was careful. Staying calm and polite had helped prevent a minor incident from turning into a real conflict. Michael also thought about the importance of community. Even though Karen had been difficult, most neighbors were friendly and supportive. A small argument did not define the neighborhood or his experience. He felt gratitude for the land he worked on, the crops he had grown, and the support he received from those who were kind and understanding. After the break, Michael resumed work. He focused on the rhythm of the tractor and the beauty of the field. The golden corn shimmered in the sunlight, and the soft rustling of the stalks created a peaceful soundtrack. Despite the earlier tension, Michael felt content and determined to complete the harvest efficiently and carefully. By the end of the afternoon, Michael had harvested almost all of the corn in his field. He felt proud of his work, knowing that he had handled both the farming and the unexpected conflict with calmness and patience. The tractor had performed well, the corn looked perfect, and the minor scratch on Karen's car was insignificant. Michael reflected on the lesson he had learned. Even when faced with difficult neighbors or unexpected problems, staying calm, polite, and focused on the task at hand could prevent conflicts from escalating. He felt confident that any future interactions with Karen could be handled peacefully, using patience and respect as his guide. As the sun began to set, Michael parked the tractor at the edge of the field. The golden light reflected off the harvested rows, and he took a moment to admire the results of his hard work. The day had been long and challenging, but he had navigated it successfully. The field was ready for the next steps, and Michael felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Karen had gone back to her house by now, and the neighborhood was quiet once again. Michael knew that the minor collision and the police visit were now behind him. He smiled, thinking about how small conflicts could be handled with patience and understanding. The cornfield, shining in the evening light, seemed to celebrate his calmness and dedication. Michael walked to the tractor one last time for the day, ready to prepare for the next morning. He felt proud of his work, proud of his composure, and grateful for the beauty of the land he cared for. Despite the unexpected collision and the tension with Karen, the day had ended well, and he was ready for the next chapter of the harvest. After the police left, Michael felt a mix of relief and determination. The morning had been stressful, but he was proud of how calmly he had handled the situation. Now, he could focus entirely on finishing the harvest, and he knew that approaching the remainder of the day with patience would make everything go smoothly. Michael climbed onto his tractor once again. The golden corn stretched across the field, almost fully harvested now. He carefully navigated the rows, paying close attention to the tractor's wheels and the surrounding area. Even though the incident with Karen had been resolved officially, he wanted to make sure no further accidents occurred. He knew the old tractor could be unpredictable at times, and he needed to stay alert. As he drove, Michael thought about how minor misunderstandings could escalate quickly if not handled calmly. Karen had reacted strongly, but he understood that people sometimes acted out of fear or frustration. He reminded himself that kindness and patience were often more effective than arguing. Meanwhile, Karen had returned to her porch after the police left. She watched Michael from a distance, arms crossed and lips pressed together. Though she seemed calmer, her expression still carried a hint of disapproval. Michael waved politely, offering a small smile. Karen hesitated but eventually nodded slightly in acknowledgement. Michael knew that this small gesture of friendliness might help ease the tension over time. Michael finished harvesting one section of the field and parked the tractor briefly to inspect the crops. The corn looked perfect, tall and golden, and the tractor had worked efficiently. He felt satisfied with the progress but also realized that the day was far from over. The remainder of the field still needed attention, and he wanted to finish before the sun set. After a short break, Michael resumed work. As he guided the tractor carefully across the remaining rows, he noticed a few neighbors walking by. Some waved, some called out greetings, and Michael responded warmly. The friendly interactions reminded him that most people in the neighborhood were supportive and understanding. The morning's conflict with Karen was unusual, and he hoped that with time it would become a minor memory rather than an ongoing issue. By midday, Michael had nearly completed the harvest. He decided to take another break, this time stepping away from the tractor to stretch and drink water. The sun was high and warm, but a gentle breeze kept the air pleasant. He took a deep breath, letting the smell of fresh corn fill his senses. Farming was hard work, but moments like this made it feel rewarding. As he rested, Michael thought about how to prevent future conflicts with Karen. He knew that accidents could happen and people sometimes overreacted. He decided that small gestures of friendliness could go a long way. Perhaps leaving a note or a gift of corn might help improve their relationship. He smiled at the idea. After all, a little kindness often softened even the strictest of neighbors. Michael returned to the tractor and continued harvesting. Each row he finished gave him a sense of accomplishment. The tractor hummed steadily beneath him, and the field seemed to respond to his careful work. The golden corn, now neatly stacked, reflected the sunlight beautifully. Michael felt proud not only of the harvest, but also of his patience in handling the earlier conflict. By late afternoon, Michael had harvested almost the entire field. He parked the tractor and walked around to inspect his work. The field looked orderly and well-tended, a testament to his hard work and dedication. As he examined the crops, he noticed a few small piles of corn that had fallen to the ground during harvesting. He carefully gathered them to ensure that nothing went to waste. While collecting the fallen corn, Michael noticed movement near the edge of the field. Karen had come out again, carrying a small notebook. She approached cautiously as if unsure how he would react. Michael greeted her with a friendly smile, remembering his plan to ease tension with kindness. "Hello, Karen," he said politely. "I wanted to make sure everything is fine with your car. I also thought you might like some fresh corn from today's harvest." He held out a small basket he had prepared, filled with golden ears of corn. Karen looked surprised. She paused, then took the basket. "Well, thank you," she said, her tone softer than it had been all morning. She glanced at the small scratch on her car and then back at Michael. "I suppose it really was a minor touch. I might have overreacted earlier." Michael nodded calmly. "It happens," he said. "We all get worried about our property. The important thing is that no one was hurt, and that everything can be resolved peacefully." Karen looked thoughtful. For a moment, she seemed to consider the situation carefully. Then she smiled slightly. "I guess you're right," she said. The small gesture of giving corn worked better than Michael had expected. Karen's tone had softened and the tension in her posture had eased. Michael realized that sometimes even strict neighbors responded positively to a little kindness and understanding. The incident that had begun the day with stress was now turning into a small opportunity for connection. Michael spent the next hour finishing the last few rows of corn. The tractor moved smoothly and the field was now fully harvested. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment, knowing that he had completed his work despite the morning's challenges. He took a moment to admire the field, golden in the late afternoon sunlight. The careful organization of the harvested corn reflected not only his skill, but also his patience and determination. Karen lingered nearby, watching Michael work. She seemed less stern now, occasionally glancing at the basket of corn he had given her. Michael waved again and she nodded in return. The simple gestures of friendliness were helping to rebuild a sense of peace between them. Michael thought that perhaps next time interactions with her could be even smoother. As long as he remained calm and considerate. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, Michael parked the tractor at the edge of the field. He took a final look at the harvested rows, feeling proud of the day's work. The field, once full of tall golden corn, now gleamed in neat rows, ready for collection and storage. Michael felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond the physical work. It was the feeling of managing a difficult situation with patience and wisdom. Karen approached him one last time. "I suppose we can call this resolved," she said, her tone neutral but polite. Michael smiled. "Yes," he replied. "I hope we can continue to be good neighbors." Karen nodded, holding the basket of corn. For the first time that day, there was no tension, only a quiet understanding. Michael walked back toward his house, reflecting on the day. He realized that the incident had taught him valuable lessons about patience, kindness, and problem-solving. Even in difficult situations, staying calm and polite could lead to positive outcomes. He felt confident that the rest of the harvest season would be smoother and that his relationship with Karen could improve over time. Back in his house, Michael cleaned up and prepared for the evening. He placed the remaining corn carefully in storage, ensuring that everything was ready for use or sale. The work had been long, but the results were satisfying. The field was fully harvested, and the minor conflict with Karen had been resolved peacefully. As he sat down with a cup of tea, Michael reflected on the events of the day. He thought about how easy it was for misunderstandings to escalate, and how important it was to approach every situation with patience and calmness. The morning had been stressful, but by remaining polite, professional, and kind, he had turned it into an opportunity for understanding and peace. The sun set over the cornfield, casting a warm golden light across the land. Michael felt grateful for the day's work, the beauty of the field, and the lessons he had learned. He knew that farming was about more than planting and harvesting crops. It was about patience, problem-solving, and building good relationships with the people around him. Michael looked forward to the next day, ready to continue his work and face any challenges with a calm heart. The incident with Karen, while unexpected and stressful, had ended in a peaceful resolution. He felt confident that with continued patience and kindness, any future conflicts could be managed just as well. The cornfield was quiet now, the tractor resting at the edge, and the golden rose glimmering in the last light of the evening. Michael knew that hard work, combined with understanding and a calm approach, could make even the most stressful day feel satisfying and successful. The next morning, Michael woke up early as usual. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting soft golden light over his farm. The air smelled fresh, filled with the scent of earth and growing crops. He felt ready to continue the day's work. The harvest had been mostly completed yesterday, but there were still some final tasks to take care of. He stepped outside and looked at the field. The tractor rested quietly at the edge, ready for action. Michael smiled as he thought about yesterday's events. Despite the minor collision with Karen, everything had ended peacefully. His polite and patient approach had calmed the situation, and he had even offered her some fresh corn. She had accepted it, though she still seemed a bit stiff and formal. Michael climbed onto the tractor, checking the engine and the blades one more time. Everything worked perfectly. He began moving through the field, finishing small sections that had been left untouched. The rhythm of the tractor, the rustling of the corn, and the gentle breeze created a peaceful atmosphere. Michael felt focused and productive. As he worked, he noticed Karen walking toward him from her driveway. She seemed more relaxed than yesterday, though her hands were on her hips in a way that suggested she was still a little cautious. Michael waved politely, and she hesitated before waving back. "Good morning, Michael," she said, her tone neutral but polite. "I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I might have overreacted a little." Michael smiled warmly. "Good morning, Karen, thank you. It's understandable. Accidents happen, and the important thing is that no one was hurt." Karen nodded, glancing at the tractor. "Your work is impressive. The field looks beautiful. I didn't realize how much effort goes into harvesting corn." Michael felt pleased. "It's hard work, but it's rewarding. I enjoy it, especially when the weather is nice like this." For a moment, they stood quietly, looking at the golden rows of corn. Michael realized that this could be a turning point. Small gestures and polite conversation had begun to ease the tension between them. Karen's strict demeanor was still there, but it seemed less sharp. Karen shifted her weight, looking around the field. "I was thinking," she said slowly, "maybe I could help in some small way. I don't know much about farming, but I wouldn't mind learning." Michael's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You want to help?" he asked. "That would be great. I could show you some simple tasks, and it might even be fun." Karen hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but only if I don't mess anything up, Michael chuckled. Don't worry. I'll show you everything step by step. Farming is about learning and patience. No one expects you to be perfect. They spent the morning together in the field. Michael guided Karen through simple tasks, like checking the corn for quality and collecting small bundles. Karen listened carefully, trying to follow instructions. She was careful, occasionally asking questions, and Michael explained each step with patience. At first, Karen was stiff and cautious. She moved slowly, clearly nervous about making a mistake. But as time passed, she began to laugh at small errors and enjoy herself. Michael noticed a small smile forming on her face. It was different from the stern expression she usually wore. At one point, Karen accidentally dropped a small bundle of corn. She looked around, embarrassed, but Michael smiled. It's okay, he said. Everyone drops things sometimes. That's how we learn. Karen laughed, a sound that surprised her as much as Michael. I never thought harvesting corn could be so fun, she admitted. Michael grinned. Farming has its moments. It's hard work, but it can also be very satisfying, and sharing it with someone makes it even better. As they continued working, Michael noticed that Karen's attitude had changed. She was still cautious, but she seemed less focused on rules and more interested in the process. Michael realized that sometimes people just needed a small experience to see things from a different perspective. By midday, they had finished checking the small sections of the field together. Michael paused to take a drink of water, and Karen followed suit. She leaned against the tractor, looking around at the golden field. You know, she said, I didn't expect to enjoy this at all. I thought I would be bored or annoyed, but it's actually nice, Michael nodded. I'm glad you feel that way. Sometimes people judge things before they try them. Farming is a lot like that. It takes patience and effort, but the rewards are worth it. Karen smiled faintly. Maybe I've been too strict sometimes. With my neighbors, the HOA, I focus too much on rules and forget that people can be reasonable. Michael listened carefully. Rules are important, but kindness and understanding matter just as much. You showed patience yesterday, and today you're learning something new. That's a great balance. Karen nodded slowly, looking thoughtful. You're right. I should try to be more flexible, especially with neighbors. It's easier to solve problems when you stay calm. Michael smiled. Exactly. And the small gestures like sharing corn or helping in the field can make a big difference. Karen looked at the basket of corn she was carrying. I guess that's true, she said, laughing softly. I didn't expect to be holding corn while learning about farming. It's kind of funny, Michael chuckled. Life has its funny moments. Sometimes they come when you least expect them. They spent the afternoon completing the remaining tasks together. Michael guided the tractor slowly across the last sections, and Karen helped collect any stray corn that had fallen. The field looked perfect, orderly, and golden in the warm sunlight. Michael felt proud of both the harvest and the peaceful interaction he had achieved with Karen. As the day progressed, they discovered small moments of humor. At one point, Karen tried to lift a large bundle of corn but struggled. Michael quickly stepped in to help, and Karen laughed at herself. I guess farming is harder than it looks, she admitted. Michael smiled. It takes practice, but you're learning quickly. By late afternoon, the work was finished. The cornfield was fully harvested, neat and organized. Michael turned off the tractor and stepped down, stretching his arms. Karen followed, carrying a small basket of corn. You did a great job today, Michael said. Thank you for helping and for being patient. Karen smiled. Thank you for teaching me. I never thought I would enjoy this, but it was good, really good, Michael nodded. I'm glad. And thank you for being willing to try something new. That makes all the difference. Karen looked at the golden rows of corn one last time and then back at Michael. I guess yesterday wasn't as bad as I thought, she said. I overreacted a little, but now I see it's not the end of the world. Michael smiled. Exactly. Sometimes small misunderstandings happen, but they can lead to learning and even friendship. Karen laughed softly. Maybe next time I'll bring cookies or something as a peace offering instead of complaining. Michael laughed too. I'd like that. And next time I might even show you how to drive the tractor. Carefully, of course. Karen shook her head, smiling. Let's not rush it. I'll stick to collecting corn for now. As the sun set, the field was quiet and beautiful. Michael and Karen stood together for a moment, admiring the golden rows. The morning had started with tension and a small collision, but the day had ended with understanding, laughter, and a sense of community. Michael realized that the unexpected turn of events had not only completed the harvest, but it also taught both of them valuable lessons about patience, kindness, and seeing things from another perspective. The minor conflict with Karen had become an opportunity for growth, understanding, and even a little fun. By the time Karen returned to her house, the air was cool and pleasant. Michael waved again, and she waved back. There was no tension, only a quiet understanding that small gestures and calmness could turn difficult situations into positive experiences. Michael walked back to his tractor, feeling proud of the day's work and the progress he had made not only in the field, but also in building a better relationship with his neighbor. The golden corn glimmered in the sunset, a reminder of the rewards of patience, effort, and understanding. He knew that tomorrow would bring new tasks, perhaps more challenges, but he also knew that with calmness, kindness, and a little humor, any situation could be handled peacefully. The harvest was complete, and the neighborhood felt a little warmer, thanks to the unexpected turn of events that had turned tension into laughter and understanding. Michael looked forward to the future, confident that even the strictest neighbor could become a friend with patience, small gestures, and a willingness to learn. The golden cornfield stood as proof that calmness, hard work, and kindness always paid off in the end. The morning after the surprising turn of events, Michael woke up feeling calm and positive. The cornfield looked perfect from his window, golden rows neatly stacked, reflecting the sunlight. Yesterday had started with tension, but it had ended with a small sense of connection between him and Karen. Michael was curious about what today might bring. He dressed quickly, had a light breakfast, and stepped outside. The air was cool and fresh, and a gentle breeze carried the smell of the recently harvested corn. The tractor sat ready at the edge of the field, and Michael climbed onto it, checking the engine and blades as usual. He felt focused and motivated, ready to complete the final tasks for the season. As he began moving through the remaining small sections of the field, Michael noticed Karen standing near her porch again. This time she looked relaxed, with her hands at her sides and a small smile on her face. She waved, and Michael waved back, feeling that the tension from earlier days had mostly disappeared. "Good morning, Michael," Karen called politely. "I hope you don't mind, but I brought something." She held a small basket covered with a cloth. Michael raised his eyebrows in curiosity. "Good morning, Karen, what is it?" he asked, smiling. "I made some muffins," she explained. "I thought you might enjoy them after all the work you've been doing in the field." Michael's smile widened. "Thank you, Karen. That's very thoughtful of you." He carefully set the tractor in neutral and walked over to accept the basket. The gesture felt genuine, and Michael realized that small acts of kindness could change even the strictest person's mood. Karen laughed softly. "I figured we could start fresh. Yesterday's little incident doesn't need to linger. We can both move forward and enjoy the neighborhood." Michael nodded. "I agree. It's easier to solve problems and enjoy life when we focus on understanding rather than anger." Karen smiled, then glanced at the tractor. "I also thought maybe I could help today, just a little. I know I'm not very skilled, but I'd like to be part of the work if it's okay." Michael was pleasantly surprised. "Of course, Karen, you can help with the lighter tasks. It's a good way to see how everything works, and it will make the work more fun." They began the day together. Michael guided Karen through small, safe tasks like checking the harvested corn for quality and stacking the final bundles neatly. Karen listened carefully, asked questions politely, and tried her best to follow his instructions. She was cautious at first, but Michael encouraged her with kind words and guidance. At one point, Karen dropped a small bundle of corn accidentally. She looked embarrassed, but Michael smiled. "It's okay, Karen. Everyone drops things sometimes. The important part is that you are learning and helping." Karen laughed softly. "I didn't think farming could be so detailed. There are so many small steps I never considered." Michael nodded. "Exactly. Farming is about patience, care, and attention to detail. It's also about enjoying the process and learning from mistakes." As the morning passed, Karen's confidence grew. She began moving more naturally, stacking the corn without hesitation and even laughing at herself when she made small errors. Michael noticed that the humor and lightness of the morning had completely replaced the tension of the previous day. By midday, most of the field work was complete. Michael and Karen took a break under a large oak tree at the edge of the property. They shared some of the muffins Karen had brought and sipped water from their bottles. Michael felt a sense of satisfaction. not just from completing the harvest, but from seeing how a small misunderstanding had transformed into cooperation and understanding. "You know," Karen said thoughtfully, "I never expected to enjoy this. I thought farming would be tedious and exhausting, but it's actually calming in a way, and working together makes it enjoyable." Michael nodded. "I agree. There's a rhythm to it. The work, the field, the tractor, it all comes together. And sharing the experience makes it even better." Karen smiled, glancing at the golden field. "I suppose yesterday's accident was a blessing in disguise. I learned something new and we even got to work together. I never thought I would say this, but I'm glad it happened." Michael laughed softly. "Life has a way of turning challenges into lessons. The important part is how we respond. Calmness, patience, and kindness can make all the difference." After their break, they returned to the field to finish the last small tasks. Michael guided Karen carefully, making sure she felt confident and safe. She followed instructions, moving steadily, and even suggested small improvements for stacking the corn. Michael appreciated her attention to detail and realized that the strictness she often displayed came from a desire for order and precision. As they worked, neighbors began to notice the unusual scene. Some waved from their yards, others smiled as they passed by. Karen waved back politely, and Michael noticed that she seemed more at ease around the community. The small gesture of cooperation and humor had changed her demeanor noticeably. By late afternoon, the field was fully harvested and organized. The golden rows of corn reflected the sunlight, creating a warm, peaceful atmosphere. Michael turned off the tractor and stepped down, stretching his arms and smiling. The harvest was complete and everything had been done efficiently and carefully. Karen walked over, carrying a small empty basket. "I had a good time today," she admitted. "I never imagined that helping with the harvest could be fun and even relaxing." Michael nodded. "I'm glad you enjoyed it. Sometimes trying new things and seeing them from a different perspective can change how we feel about a situation." Karen smiled faintly. "And I see now that overreacting doesn't help anyone. Patience and understanding work much better," Michael agreed. "Exactly. And small gestures like sharing muffins or helping each other can build trust and good relationships. That's what neighbors are for." Karen paused, looking thoughtful. "I suppose we can start fresh from now on. No more unnecessary complaints. Just understanding and cooperation." Michael smiled warmly. "I think that's a great idea. It makes the neighborhood more pleasant for everyone." Karen nodded, smiling genuinely this time. "And maybe I can even bring a few more muffins or snacks next time. It seems like a good way to build friendship rather than argue." Michael laughed softly. "I'd look forward to that. And perhaps next season we can do some planting together as well." "It could be fun." Karen shook her head, smiling. "Let's take it one step at a time. For now, I'm happy to see the field fully harvested and tidy. That alone is satisfying." Michael walked with her toward the edge of the field, admiring the completed work. The golden rows of corn stood as a testament not only to hard work, but also to patience, understanding, and the value of small gestures. What had started as a tense conflict with an HOA neighbor had transformed into a peaceful and cooperative experience. By the evening, Karen returned to her home, waving once more. Michael waved back, feeling a sense of closure. The incident with the minor collision and the police call had been resolved, not just officially but also personally and emotionally. Both of them had learned valuable lessons about patience, kindness, and seeing situations from another perspective. Michael returned to his house, satisfied with the day and the harvest. He carefully stored the remaining corn, making sure everything was ready for use or distribution. He reflected on the past 2 days, realizing that challenges and misunderstandings could lead to growth and connection when handled calmly and thoughtfully. As the sun set, casting warm golden light over the cornfield, Michael felt proud not only of the work he had completed, but also of the relationships he had improved. The field was quiet, beautiful, and orderly, a perfect symbol of the peaceful resolution. He knew that future challenges might arise, but he also knew that patience, kindness, and understanding could transform conflicts into opportunities. The story of the minor collision, the police call, and the surprising cooperation with Karen would remain a memorable lesson in handling difficult situations with grace. Michael took a final look at the golden cornfield before heading inside for the evening. The day had ended with satisfaction, humor, and friendship. He knew that the neighborhood felt a little warmer, and that his relationship with Karen had improved in unexpected and positive ways. The golden field reflected the sunlight as Michael closed the door behind him. He felt calm, content, and grateful for the work he had done and the lessons he had learned. The minor conflict that had begun with tension had transformed into understanding, cooperation, and even a little humor. Michael smiled, thinking about the future. Farming was hard work, but it was also full of rewards. Today had shown him that patience, kindness, and calmness could turn even a difficult situation into a positive experience. The cornfield, the tractor, and the quiet neighborhood all reflected the harmony that was possible when people approached challenges thoughtfully and with understanding. As the evening deepened, Michael relaxed, feeling proud of both the completed harvest and the peaceful resolution with Karen. The golden rows of corn shimmered in the fading sunlight, standing as a symbol of effort, patience, and the rewards of handling situations with calmness and care.